Buhari seeks confirmation of 7 independent corrupt practices and other related offences commission members. Speaker House of Representatives calls for unity ahead of 2023 elections, plus China population shrinks first time in 60 years. Hello, this is News Live on Via Television. I am Deborah Ndukaife. President Muhammadu Buhari has written to the Senate seeking confirmation of the appointment of 7 members of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission (ICPC). The President based his request on Section 3, Subsection 3 and 7 of the Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act. Buhari's request was contained in a letter read by Senate President Ahmad Lawan on the floor of the Upper Legislative Chamber on Tuesday. The Senate has said that it would adjourn plenary next week to allow lawmakers to have time for campaigns for the forthcoming election. The Senate had just resumed plenary from 3-week break after it adjourned plenary on December 28, 2022. The Senate President Ahmad Lawan on Tuesday disclosed during the plenary that after the week's work, they would suspend plenary for the sake of the elections. And he noted that the break would enable lawmakers contesting for various offences during the general elections to carry out necessary campaigns in the various constituencies. He, however, said the Senate might suspend activities this week if it can't deal with urgent issues requiring its attention, so it does not have to sit next week. The Speaker House of Representatives Femi Gbajabiamila has stressed that political actors should ensure that politics-related conversations seek to unite the people by highlighting an agenda of shared prosperity, social development, and respect for humanity. This is against the backdrop of increased politics-related attacks in parts of the country. The Speaker at the resumption of plenary noted that the nature of political conversations, particularly in the lead-up to election, determines electoral outcomes and the quality of governance. He therefore urged Nigerians to unite and ensure the dangerous trend of insecurity and attacks on political actors does not lead to circumstances that threaten the forthcoming general election.
Parts of the country. We must unite to ensure this dangerous trend does not lead to circumstances that threaten the forthcoming elections. The quality of the political conversations in society, particularly in the lead-up to elections, is a determining factor in the electoral outcomes and the quality of governance that will result therefrom. When political discourse seeks to unite the people behind an agenda of shared prosperity, social development, and respect for the humanity of persons, governance will also reflect these priorities. The security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. With these words, the Constitution obligates us all who swear to serve the government to do everything to protect the lives and property of all citizens and promote their well-being above all else. This obligation is central to the governing contract between the government and the citizenry.
The House of Representatives has urged the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, Federal Ministry of Finance, Federal Inland Revenue Service, and other relevant stakeholders to explore Executive Order 007 of 2019 Road Infrastructure Development and Refurbishment Investment Tax credit scheme to provide an alternative funding source to finance the reconstruction of Bida-Lemo-Oshishi-Zungeru Road in Niger State. In a motion sponsored by Saidu Abdullahi, raised concerns that, despite the approval of the Minister of Works and Housing for the redesign and reconstruction of the road, the amount captured in the 2023 Appropriation Act for the road is grossly inadequate and cannot make any significant impact on the project. The lawmaker noted that if the Bida-Zungeru Road trunk road is reconstructed, it will enhance the western link of the country to the Zungeru hydropower project, which will generate 700 megawatts of electricity, close to 10% of the nation's total domestic energy needed, and have a positive impact on the country's GDP through enhanced agricultural productivity and commercial activities.
The 92-kilometer Bida-Zungeru Road is the preeminent link route between the north and southwestern Nigeria, which was first constructed by Costain West Africa in 1962 during the First Republic and reconstructed by the Babangida administration in 1989. Also note that aside from the recent maintenance on some failed portion of the road through the COVID-19 intervention by FEMA, no rehabilitation has been carried out on the Trunk Hill Road and its bridges since it was rehabilitated over 30 years ago. Aware that Zungeru Town plays host to the ongoing 700 megawatt hydroelectric power station project embarked on by the federal government of Nigeria at the cost of $1.3 billion. The project is part of the federal government strategies to reposition power generation in phases in the country, and upon completion, we have the recognition of a strategic national asset. Also aware that the area from Bide to Zungeru is a major rice belt with huge potentials for other agricultural produce that can hugely contribute to the country's drive at food security.
And on health update, the federal government is yet to introduce the human papilloma virus vaccines into the national immunization schedule almost 3 years after it made the promise. HPV is the most common viral infection of the reproductive tract, mainly transmitted through sexual contact, and most people become infected with HPV shortly after the onset of sexual activity. The World Health Organization said 2 HPV types, 16 and 18, are responsible for nearly 50% of high-grade cervical precancers. Both vaccination against HPV and screening and treatment of a precancerous lesion are cost-effective ways to prevent cervical cancer. In his remark at the flag-off event for the Integrated Media Outreach Program on March 16, 2020, Vice President Yemi Osibanjo promised that in the next couple of months, the rotavirus and the human papillomavirus vaccines will be introduced into the national immunization schedule. While the federal government launched the rotavirus vaccine 29 months after the promise, it has yet to introduce the HPV vaccines into routine immunization 35 months after promise. The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, has warned the public against the use and purchase of 2 contaminated products called Abronol syrup and Doc-1 Max syrup. NAFDAC, in a statement, disclosed that the 2 medical products were identified in Uzbekistan, a Central Asian nation, and reported to the World Health Organization. The agency stated that the contaminated products failed to meet the quality standards after laboratory analysis, and it was discovered that both products contained unacceptable amounts of diethylene glycol or ethylene glycol as contaminant tests. According to NAFDAC, the diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol found in these products are toxic to humans when consumed and can prove fatal and toxic effects. NAFDAC, however, urged members of the public in possession of the substandard product to discontinue the usage, sale, and submit stock to its nearest office. When News Live returns, Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, has addressed Chatham House in London. Details of this and more comes to you after the break. Do stay tuned.
Basically, an environmentalist is someone who believes in clean, sustainable environment. And as an environmental artist, I use materials. I believe in clean and sustainable environment. I use materials that contribute to environmental degradation, like the leather bags, plastic bottles, aluminum foils, and all that, to create artworks that I use to engage the public to discuss issues on environmental challenges. You know, as an artist, I started out by using improvisation in my art, and then gradually I got this idea about using, you know, materials that I found around me, organic materials around me, to create works. And then I started getting involved in the crusade to save the environment. Well, at some point, I used to have a studio somewhere, but then I had issues, I had to leave. And then because of the kind of work that I do, mostly sculptures, you know, I found it very difficult to find a space where I used to stay, which was just down the street here. And then I jogged past here every day, and then one day I saw this place. It wasn't in use, and then I applied to the government. They gave me the papers to go ahead and do it. So I now started creating works, you know, getting other artists involved, and then we're all trying to develop here into a cultural, environmental space where everything is going to be more like a bohemian kind of arrangement, environmental and all that. So this is a diptych, has two sides, and then unlike the rose flower in the gallery, here I'm trying to, the subject here is freedom. You know, if you have to go like this to look at it very well, it's two hands, you know, somebody in shackles, and then you're seeing the shackles breaking off. You know, for me, I'm trying to send a message about, most of us get so consumed in abusing the environment. So you need to break through for someone who is living in denial that the environment isn't even, you know, at risk. So for me, the breakthrough, the freedom, is when you accept that notion that the environment, that we all contribute to this environmental degradation one way or the other. You know, so the freedom comes in the mindset that actually the environment is at risk. So what are you doing to save the environment? I get the soda cans, and then I cut them out. First and foremost, for me, because they look so shiny, and then I have to tune down the shine of the soda cans. So I now burn them, and while I burn them, I also try to let people remember about the carbon that we're talking about, their carbon footprints. And after burning them, I select them into different colors.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is News Live. A recap of our top stories. Buhari seeks confirmation of 7 independent corrupt practices and other related offences commission members. Speaker House of Representatives calls for unity ahead of 2023 elections. Plus, China population shrinks first time in 60 years. The chairman of Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, has said that the 2023 general election will be held in spite of the various attacks on the Commission's facility across the nation. Addressing an audience at Chatham House, London, Tuesday afternoon, Yakubu decried the increasing spate of attacks on INEC's facilities in form of arson, but reassured the audience that the Commission would go ahead with the election as scheduled. Professor Yakubu also noted it is satisfied with the preparation done so far ahead of the 2023 elections. Furthermore, the chairman of the commission said that the 2023 general election is an election for the young people in Nigeria. Giving a breakdown of voter registration and collection of permanent voters' cards in Nigeria at his address, Yakubu said records on the ground showed that the election will be dominated by the Nigerian youths. The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, says the electoral body has concluded on the policy on diaspora voting. The federal government in 2017 put the number of Nigerians in the diaspora at 17 million. However, many more citizens have since left for foreign countries in a wave commonly referred to as JAPA. Addressing the recurrent issues around legalizing diaspora voting, the INEC chairman expressed hope that the legal obstacles preventing foreign-based Nigerians from voting will be cleared eventually. Yakubu disclosed this while delivering a lecture at Chatham House in London on Tuesday afternoon on the topic Nigeria's 2023 election preparation and priorities for electoral integrity and inclusion. The Independent National Electoral Commission has revealed that it will conduct mock accreditation nationwide ahead of the 2023 general elections. Now, the INEC chairman said the mock accreditation would be carried out across selected polling units to ascertain the integrity of the bimodal voter accreditation system before the main election begins in February. Yakubu, however, further revealed that every BVAS machine deployed across the 774 local government had been tested, adding that the functionality of the machines was impressive. He also stated that backup machines have been readily provided in case of system glitches. Now, the Academic Staff Union of Universities may drag the federal government over its members' 8 months withheld salaries, and ASU will resort to the court. It was learnt once the government goes ahead to pay members of the parallel union, the Congress of Nigerian Universities Academics. Counsel for ASU Femi Falana disclosed this in an interview. The federal government, through the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, is set to pay the withheld salaries and allowances of lecturers under the aegis of CONWA. This was contained in a memo addressed to the President, CONWA Dr. Niyesh Sumonu, by the Director, Integrated Personnel Payroll Information System, Office of Accountant General of the Federation, Charles Wali. Recall the government withheld the salaries of Nigerian lecturers during the 8-month strike by ASU. Also during the strike, the government also registered CONWA as a trade union. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, has warned that 25 million Nigerians risk severe hunger in 2023 if action is not taken. According to the agency, this is a rise from the 70 million persons earlier projected to face food insecurity in the country. Conflicts, climate change, inflation, and rising food prices are the key drivers, it said, while commenting on the development. The resident and humanitarian coordinator for Nigerian, Matthias Shimel, said it is deeply concerning it, therefore called on the Nigerian governor, donor agencies and other key stakeholders to take urgent steps to mitigate the situation. Now, the Nigerian Immigration Service has warned the general public and eligible applicants not to pay anyone to get recruitment into the service. NIS, in a statement, said the recruitment process is free and selection is based on merit. Immigration recently opened its portal for the 2023 recruitment of interested applicants across the country into the Civil Defense, Correctional, Fire and Immigration Service Board departments. The government agency said that it does not take part in any form of cash transaction during the recruitment process. NIS urged the public and applicants to report any of its personnel caught collecting money to the police or any relevant anti-corruption agency. Meanwhile, the application for recruitment into immigration to fill vacancies began on Monday, January 16, 2023 and will end on Monday, January 30th, 2 weeks after. You're still watching News Live on Viewer Television. Business, international and entertainment news comes to you right after the break. Just stay tuned.
Souls came together. Two souls came together. They're never known.
Tat Fragrance, the new luxury fragrance for men and women.
And now on business, the federal government has announced that the licensing round for 7 deep offshore open block, which commenced on January 3rd, 2023, will last for 4 months. It invited investors from across the world with capability and experience in deep water operations to embrace the fiscal provision of the Petroleum Industry Act 2021 and join in bidding for the oil blocks. The Chief Executive Nigeria Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Benga Komolafe, disclosed this in Lagos at the pre-bid conference for the 2022 and 2023 licensing round of petroleum prospecting licenses in deep offshore Nigeria. The pre-bid conference was held following the announcement of the 2022 and 2023 mini-bid round exercise on December 2022, 22nd. Now speaking at the conference, which had its theme as growing upstream investment in Nigeria through licensing round, the bid process and opportunities, Komolafe said the approval of the exercise by President Muhammadu Buhari was the first in the last 15 years. The International Monetary Fund has said about 15% of low-income countries are already in debt distress. In a new report titled Confronting Fragmentation, Where It Matters Most, Trade Debt and Climate Action, the IMF said an additional 45% of the population is at further risk of debt distress. The reporter stated that debt is a challenge in many countries and fragmentation will make it harder to resolve sovereign debt crisis, especially if key official creditors are divided along geopolitical lines. The IMF noted that about 25% are at high risk and facing default like borrowing spreads among emerging markets. The monetary body further stated that there were signs of progress in the Group of 20's Common Framework for Debt Treatment. Now, according to IMF, countries seeking debt restructuring under the framework will need greater certainty on processes and standards as well as shorter or more predictable timelines. The Central Bank of Nigeria injected $15.3 billion into the economy to stabilize the value of the naira in 2022. Now, this was obtained in the banking sector regulators' monthly and quarterly economic reports on foreign exchange market developments. The report noted that $4.86 billion, $4.81 billion, and $4.18 billion were injected into the economy during the first, second, and third quarters respectively, while $1.46 billion was injected in October. The CBN stated that total foreign exchange sales to authorized dealers by the bank at $4.86 billion decreased by 5.8% compared with the previous quarter's level. Now, the stock market of the Nigerian Exchange Limited on Monday began the week on a negative note as the market capitalization lost 89.14 billion naira. The NGX All Share Index decreased by 163.66 basis points or 0.32% to close at 52,348.82 basis points from 52,512.48 basis points. Similarly, the overall market capitalization lost 9.14 billion naira to close at 28.513 trillion naira from 28.602 trillion naira it opened for trading. However, the market break closed positive, recording 20 gainers against 23 losers. The Association of Mobile Money and Bank Agents in Nigeria has said that there are no plans to increase service for charges following the Central Bank of Nigeria's decision to review cash withdrawals limits for automated teller machines and over-the-counter withdrawals. This was disclosed by the National President, Amba Victor Olojo, in an exclusive chat. Now, there have been insinuations that the new CBN's withdrawal policy would lead to an increase in fees charged by the POS agents. The new CBN cash limit policy, among other things, attract processing fees of 5% and 10% respectively for individuals and corporate entities effective January 9, 2023. When reacting, Olojo explained that the CBN was aware of the implication and works currently in the pipeline on possible solutions. He stated that despite an increase in the cost of production caused by the withdrawal limit, bank agents have resolved to register the businesses as corporate entities rather than increasing service fees. And now on international, Al-Shabaab launched a deadly attack on Somali military base on Tuesday, just a day after the government claimed a historic victory over the jihadists with the capture of a strategic coastal town. There were conflicting reports about the death toll after the Islamist fighters stormed the camp in the town of Howard Lee, north of the capital Mogadishu. Army Chief Odowa Rage said on national radio that 5 soldiers, including a senior officer, had died in the attack claimed by the Al-Qaeda-allied militant group. In recent months, the army and local clan militias have retaken chunks of territory from the militants in Galmudug and Hishabel states in an operation backed by U.S. airstrikes and African Union force. But despite the gains, Al-Shabaab has demonstrated the ability to strike back with a lethal force against civilian and military targets. The United Nations, United States and France have called for the unconditional release of dozens of women kidnapped in Burkina Faso's northern Somme province between January 12 and 13. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said he was alarmed by the kidnappings and the first attack of this type deliberately targeting women in Burkina Faso. The United States Department said it was deeply concerned. In a statement, France condemned the kidnappings and called for the women's immediate release. No group said it was behind the abduction, but the kidnappings took place in an area where militants are active. Industrial action looked set to intensify on Monday after Britain's largest teaching union announced a series of strike days after pay next month in England and Wales. The National Education Union said its members voted overwhelmingly to walk out as part of calls for an above-inflation pay rise. The announcement came as public sector workers hold a wave of walkouts for salaries to take into account double-digit inflation. The union leaders are set to meet the education minister on Wednesday, and the union announced a national strike day on February 1st, followed by a series of more regional strikes over 6 days in February and March. It said each school will only be affected for 4 days, and meanwhile this week nurses in England, Wales and Northern Ireland were also due to resume strike action on Wednesday and Thursday. Now, China's population shrank last year for the first time in more than 6 decades, official data showed Tuesday, as the world's most populous country faces a looming demographic crisis. The nation of 1.4 billion has seen birth rates plunge to record lows as its workforce ages in a rapid decline that analysts warn would stop economic growth and pile pressure on constrained public coffers. The last time China's population declined was in the early 1960s as the country battled the worst famine in its modern history, a result of the disastrous Mao Zedong agricultural policy known as the Great Leap Forward.
住在31个省、自治区、直辖市的港澳台居民和外籍人员，是14.1亿人，比上年末减少85万人。全年出生人口950。
China ended its strict one-child policy imposed in the 1980s owing into fears of overpopulation in 2016 and began allowing couples to have 3 children in 2021, and that has failed to reverse the demographic decline for a country that has long relied on its vast workforce as a driver of economic growth. Meanwhile, residents of Beijing and Shanghai gave their views.
现在应该是00后刚好到20多岁的一个阶段，然后大部分年轻人现在都不太想 生孩子，包括现在这个经济情况啊，这个社会的环境，所以可能导致了一些这样的人口。那问题现在国家那个新政策啊，鼓励生3胎也好的话，具体实施起来也并不太容易啊，因为毕竟那个养孩子各方面生活成本还比较高啊，经济是一方面，包括你家庭人口，比如老年人是吧？你抚养孩子花出的时间和精力啊，这个在现在就是说就业啊那个压力比较大的情况下，也是一个比较困难的。
还真是不太，就是这些事儿，就是也都，你像我是80后的话，可能不是很想考虑生孩子这些事儿。如果自己能自给自足的话，可能连对象都不想找。大部分人我觉得现在也都是差不多这种想法吧。
Vietnam's President Nguyen Phuc has resigned, state media has said on Tuesday after days of rumors he was about to be sacked as part of a major anti-corruption drive that has seen several ministers fired. Phuc's sudden departure is a highly unusual move in communist Vietnam, where political changes are normally carefully orchestrated with an emphasis on social stability. State media said the Communist Party had ruled he was responsible for wrongdoings by senior ministers under him during his 2016-2021 stint as Prime Minister before he became President. 2 deputy Prime Ministers were sacked this month in an anti-corruption purge that has led to the arrest of dozens of officials, with many of the graft allegations relating to deals done as part of Vietnam's COVID-19 response. At least 100 officials and business people, including dance assistants, have been arrested in connection with the scandal involving the distribution of COVID-19 testing kits. Now on entertainment, veteran Nollywood actor Kanayo is among celebrities who have been vocal and actively involved ahead of the 2023 general elections. The entertainer, who is a member of the Presidential Campaign Council of the Labour Party, recently shared a video on Instagram addressing Igbos in different parts of the country. Kanayo specifically directed his message to those who reside outside the southeast to remain where they are and cast their votes come February. According to the veteran actor, the 2023 election is very critical and it's important for Igbos to stay wherever they are in a bid to secure 25% votes out of the 36 states in the country. Now, Elvis Presley's daughter, Lisa Marie, passes away at the age of 54. She was rushed to the hospital after being found in a state of cardiac arrest in her home in Calabasas, California, the reports.
Presley was a singer, songwriter in her own right, releasing 3 albums before her death. She lived an eventful life in the shadow of her legendary father and was married 4 times, including to fellow musician Michael Jackson and the actor Nicolas Cage. Lisa Marie Presley, the only child of music legend Elvis Presley, has died at the age of 54, a musician in her own right. Her death has triggered an outpouring of grief from friends including Bette Midler and John Travolta. She leaves behind 3 children. Lisa Marie was also a dedicated philanthropist, as she long oversaw the Elvis Presley Charitable Foundation, which benefits homeless families and offers rent-free housing, daycare for children, and other services to families in need.
And that's all on News Live, but before we go, a recap of the headlines. Buhari seeks confirmation of 7 independent corrupt practices and other related offences commission members. Speaker of House of Representatives calls for unity ahead of 2023 elections. Plus, China population shrinks first time in 60 years. Many thanks for watching. I am Deborah Ndukaife. Please stay tuned and enjoy the rest of our programs.